Osmosis is a special type of diffusion that specifically refers to the movement of water across cell membranes. And without water, no life could survive. The majority of space inside of cells is water, and this is the solvent in which the biochemical processes in cells take place. Cell membranes are selectively permeable, meaning that water molecules can pass through them easily, but solutes do not. And if the concentration of water molecules inside the cell is lower than the concentration outside, water will diffuse into the cell until a balance or equilibrium is reached. And this process is called osmosis. And the definition of osmosis is the diffusion of water across a selectively permeable membrane from an area of high water concentration or low solute concentration to an area of low water concentration or high solute concentration. As the water is moving down a concentration gradient, it does not require any energy to do so and is therefore a form of passive transport. This diagram illustrates how osmosis works. If you had a tube in the shape of a U like this, and you put a selectively permeable membrane in the middle of it, and on one side of the tube you had a lower concentration of solute dissolved in water, and then the other side you had a higher concentration of solute dissolved in water. And the selectively permeable membrane only allows the water molecules to get through the membrane and not the solute molecules. The water molecules are going to want to move from an area of low concentration of solute to an area of high concentration of solute. So you're going to go from the left side of the tube to the right side of the tube until an equilibrium is achieved in the concentration of solutes on either side of the tube. Now this is going to cause the water on the left hand side of the tube to drop and the water on the right hand side of the tube to increase when it becomes at equilibrium, proving that the water has moved from one side to the other through the process of osmosis. There are three key terms that are used to describe the relative concentration of solutes in water on either side of a cell membrane, and these are isotonic, hypertonic, and hypertonic. Isotonic means that the fluids inside and outside of the cell have equal concentration of solutes. Iso equals the same. In this case, water moves in both directions equally across the membrane or at an equilibrium. When cells are surrounded by solution that contains a lower solute concentration than in the cytoplasm, the external solution is said to be hypotonic to the cells. Hypo equals lower. In this case, water molecules will diffuse through the membrane into the cell because it is moving down a concentration gradient. When cells are surrounded by a solution that contains a higher solute concentration than in the cytoplasm, the external solution is said to be hypertonic, hyper meaning higher. In this case, the water molecules will diffuse out of the cell because it is moving down a concentration gradient. Hypotonic solutions, like fresh water, pose a particular problem for organisms such as unicellular eukaryotes. And this is because their cells are only surrounded by a cell membrane. Remember that in a hypotonic solution, water molecules diffuse through the membrane into cells. This can cause cells to swell and even burst, killing the organism. Animals have therefore devised a series of ways from preventing this occurring, such as amoebas, which are unicellular organisms that live in fresh water. Amoebas are able to remove excess water by forming little pools of water in organelles called contractile vacuoles. And when these vacuoles stretch to a certain point, they contract and expel the water out of the amoeba. So here's some video footage of this occurring, and you can see the contractile vacuole on the lower left-hand side of the amoeba swelling as the water moves in to the amoeba and then contracting to expel the water. In multicellular animals, such as humans, cells are surrounded in isotonic fluid, and this means that cells can function efficiently as water diffuses equally in both directions, resulting in no net movement of water into or out of cells. This isotonic balance is maintained by the concentration of solutes in blood plasma, which in turn is controlled by your kidneys. And this isotonic balance is important because negative effects can occur if the blood plasma surrounding red blood cells becomes hypotonic or hypertonic. If the salt concentration of the plasma decreases, in other words, becomes less salty, red blood cells will be in a hypotonic solution because there is less solute outside of the cell than inside the cell. And this will cause water to flow into the cell faster than it leaves, causing the cell to swell and possibly even burst. And this is referred to as hemolysis when a red blood cell bursts. Lysis meaning to break. In a hypotonic solution, meaning the salt concentration of the plasma increases, in other words, becomes more salty, water will flow out of the cell faster than it will into the cell, and this can cause some red blood cells to shrivel, called crenation, and they can possibly die from this from lack of water. Unlike animal cells, plant cells have a cell wall surrounding the cell membrane. In addition, plants commonly have large fluid-filled vacuoles. Plant cell vacuoles contain sap that is rich in solutes. When a hypotonic solution surrounds the cell, water molecules diffuse by osmosis, firstly into the cytoplasm and then into the vacuole. The vacuole swells, pushing the cytoplasm and plasma membrane against the cell wall. The tough cell wall prevents the cell from bursting. If the cell wall stretches as much as possible, no more water can enter, and the cell is said to be turgid. Turgor is very important to plants as it helps to support them and maintain their shape and form. If you see a plant that is wilting on a hot, dry day, it is because significant amounts of water have evaporated from the plant, meaning that the external concentration of water molecules becomes less than in the vacuole. This causes water molecules to diffuse out, reducing the volume of the vacuole and causing the cells to become limp or flaccid, which causes the plant to wilt. And if enough water is lost, the cell membrane pulls away from the cell wall in a process called plasmolysis.